Greetings, adult collectors. I am Crash the Customizer, and welcome to another custom Transformers showcase. This is my custom Beast Wars Optimus Primal. Before we take a look at the figure itself here, take a look at the background, which is supposed to be the best version of the Axelon that I could come up with what I have. So, of course, using a cardboard base. I have this little assembly here that I made from some Lego pieces. You can kind of see just this little like round table thing here, and you can probably tell that this is the chest and arms of the Energon Unicron I used to have, because I basically took it apart because it was incomplete and I honestly saw potential for it to kind of be this. And then of course this here is an old phone that I have hooked up to PowerPoint, so I can basically just make a little PowerPoint slide, and then I can actually just do this, and I can change the slide. And then this is kind of supposed to be rejuvenation chamber, and actually put figures in it. It is actually just about big enough to fit Optimus Primal in. So go ahead and stick him in there. Let's take this right here. So this is actually made from a cat treats container that actually does work pretty well for a actual maximal rejuvenation chamber, because you can actually fit pretty much about any size figure in here, which is pretty cool. So now back to the figure. Now this is just the Kingdom Optimus Primal, but this is actually a really good mold, and probably the best mainline Optimus Primal we've ever actually gotten. And that's why I really like this figure, because it wasn't that expensive, and it's actually a really good figure as far as actually show accuracy and just the overall design. I honestly love this figure, and I really didn't do a lot of painting on it because it didn't really need much. So I did paint a little bit of the sections here of some black, so it kind of covers up a little more of this in the beast mode. I painted in this little blue section right in here, and you're not really be able to see this super well, but I did kind of paint his eyes a little more of an orange, and that's simply because I wanted to kind of make him look a little more like a good guy. I don't really understand why in Beast Wars a lot of the characters had red eyes, but they were good guys. That really doesn't make sense, given that usually red eyes are associated with the bad guys. Because like Decepticons had red eyes, and usually the Autobots had like blue or sometimes yellow eyes, but they gave a lot of the Beast Wars Maximals red eyes. But Beast Wars was a strange series, not a bad series, actually a really good, solid series, but a little strange. But I honestly really do like this figure, and I'm really glad that they actually made this in the Kingdom line. And it does have some really cool things you can actually do with it, and I honestly really like this. So you basically push on this little section right here, and it brings up this little, I guess, little blasters here. I think that's really neat. It does on both sides here. So just push in this little section here, I'll push that up, and you can pull out the rest of the way. Now one thing I will say is these are a little bit too small, which is why I made this little thing here. So this glued two of those small Lego blue pegs, and then I can actually just stick them perfectly on this little section right here. So it actually kind of extends these a little more and kind of makes them just seem a little more kind of like just cooler looking. You can actually see now he has like these lot bigger looking blasters. And then of course you can take these little ones up here and bring them down, so you kind of fire those off. And then of course on the back here he has his swords, so you can go put those in his hands here. Now Optimus Primal is all ready for battle. And you can actually stick things in here, like you can stick little Lego pieces to basically look like things are firing out of, like little Lego flame pieces or whatever. I don't currently have any right now to really show that off, but because of the actual pieces I use, you can really just stick something right in there. And then of course you do obviously have to take these off to push these back in, but I think it just does to kind of extend those a little bit. It actually makes that look a lot better. So we'll go ahead and take his swords back out here. Go ahead and put them back on his back here, which basically just tab into the little section right there. Oops. And now we'll go ahead and bring in some comparisons. First off, here he is with his pre-Beast Wars version. And here he is with his idol, Optimus Prime. Now, some of you probably may have noticed is I actually did not give him postable hands. And that's simply because with this particular figure, it already has the opening and closing hands, which I do already like. And then the fact that trying to find hands that would actually look good because of how like kind of big his fingers are. If I use that typical type of posable hands I use, it would be way too small. I don't think that would look good. So I honestly just kept it the way it is. And I mean, I honestly don't mind it like this because it kind of makes sense for the, of course, the gorilla mode, which we'll go ahead and get into now. So let's get a transform him. First, we need to remove the weapons, and these, of course, can technically store in the beast mode in the exact same way. It's just better to take them off because they're just going to fall off anyway. First thing we need to do is basically pull this whole section here back that his head is on, just like this, and then these sections here we'll just push into this little section in here. Basically pull this out and you're going to rotate it around, and then you're going to take the beast mode head and rotate it around so it basically faces like that, and just go ahead and collapse this section back in. Take the chest, flip it around so it faces that way, basically just bring this section back in, and then you have this half gorilla, half robot, which looks very weird. So to fix that, we need to flip down his shoulder pads so it covers up those sections. We need to bring up his feet, bring in those little pistons there just like that, which is really cool. Then we need to rotate his legs around, and then we're going to take this section here of the back and just basically bring it down, and it'll just basically kind of sit there. I think it doesn't really tab into anything, not even like the legs, but I guess it doesn't really need to. It just kind of sits there. And honestly, really like kind of just doing this because since he is a gorilla, you can kind of put him in the classic Bigfoot pose, like he's just walk across the forest like you usually see with Bigfoot. I love doing that because it's just kind of fun. But anyway, as far as painting in the beast mode, so I mentioned how I painted some of these here so it kind of covers up some of those white sections. And then I painted in his eyes because his eyes were very bland and you really couldn't really tell, like, I remember what they really looked like, but they just didn't really look realistic. So as you can see, I basically just made them about as realistic as you can make them, and I basically just painted them white and then took a toothpick and just put the little black dot in there so it actually gives it off the more realistic gorilla face. And that honestly looks pretty awesome. And of course, to get him into a normal gorilla pose, we just go ahead and bring his head up, bring up his arms, and just kind of rotate these around. And then just kind of bring his feet down on these little double hinges here, and then they will tab in right up in here to the little kneecaps right there. And then now we got him in more of a classic gorilla pose. And then his swords, like I said, tab in the same way right here. But honestly, this looks a little weird because now you've got a gorilla carrying swords, and it kind of almost too looks like he's got weird looking blasters on. It looks very weird. Obviously, like, that's not really something a gorilla would do, so I honestly don't put those on there like that because I think it seems pointless. Because if it like this, you can tell he's just, disguised as a gorilla rather than, looking like a gorilla that's weaponized, and that doesn't really make any sense. And of course, technically, you can also bring these things here out, but again, that doesn't make any sense. But yeah, I don't really like this gorilla mode, especially since you can actually put him in that Bigfoot pose. I really love doing that, honestly. So now I'll go ahead and bring some comparisons here then. Here he is with his pre-Beast Wars self. And here he is with Optimus Prime. So we have truck, monkey, truck, monkey. Sorry, I had to make that joke. Anyway. So now I'll go ahead and get Optimus Primal back into his robot mode. So the first thing we need to do, we need to go ahead and stand him up like Bigfoot. Then we're going to take his shoulder pads, bring them up. Go ahead and rotate his hand around so that it faces this way. Go ahead and bring the head up and kind of bring it back. Go ahead and flip this little section here up, and then basically just rotate his legs around and then bring down his feet. They do actually click into place. You'll kind of hear that click. Then we need to take the section here, pull this up, rotate the head around this way so it goes around like that. And then for these, I find it easier basically to kind of turn this a certain way like this, bring that up, bring this one up, and then turn it around a little bit so you can kind of get your finger in there and kind of pull that out. I find that's about the easiest way to do it. Let's go bring those out, rotate this section completely around. So basically go just like that, push it in, flip this around, bring this whole head section in, just collapse in right there. And there we have Optimus Primal back into his robot mode. Now, honestly, like I said, this is a figure that I really, really like. And this is probably one of the best Optimus Primal figures we've ever gotten. And I'm really happy to have this figure. And that's pretty much it for this video. If you like this video, be sure to check out the description where you'll find a link to the playlist of all the future Beast Wars customs, along with the pre-Beast Wars customs. There'll also be a link that'll take you to my stop motion channel, where I'm currently just kind of doing random stop motions, but I'm working on a stop motion series actually about these guys, so be sure to check that out. Be sure to like and subscribe to this channel so you don't miss any future customs. Until next time, this is Crash the Customizer, out.
So let me get this straight. You named yourself after me, but you transform into a monkey instead of a truck. Well, to be fair, my Cybertronian mode was the same as yours. But I traveled to the distant past, where vehicles weren't invented yet. So I had to scan the next best thing. Well, I suppose that makes sense. I have one more question. My catchphrase is, Autobots, transform and roll out. So what's yours? My catchphrase is, Maximals, maximize! I see. Well, I suppose it was nice meeting you then. I wonder what it would be like if Megatron had somebody named himself after him. But that's preposterous, though. Who would name himself after Megatron?